Level 3. Another bloody wall proclaimed as we reached the top of the next stairwell. I knew this level was where we'd find the elevator, assuming it led to the surface. Looking down the bloody and bullet-riddled corridor, I could see just how many ponies had been gunned down before the turrets had finally been destroyed, and was strangely irritated by the fact that I was glad those turrets had been shooting at us. I traversed the corpse-strewn corridor, with Cherry following close behind me. Her eyes were averted from the mutilated mess as she seemed to focus her mind to focus on something else because she wasn't displaying any symptoms of trauma. I could only suspect that the crazy raiders' ramblings were among them. As I rounded another corner, I noticed a set of double doors ahead, shattered into splinters. I assumed the rocket-wielding buckwheat dispatched downstairs was responsible for the destruction done to the doors. Or something else with an equally explosive weapon, my mind told me, reminding me that if one bunny could be armed with heavy explosive weaponry, then there was more likely another scum carrying that kind of firepower out there. On the roof above the remains of the door were turrets, the likes of which were now nothing more than mangled scrap metal. The bloody white walls either side of us were broken by long sheets of tinted glass. We noticed into what appeared to be more labs. It was still far beyond me to even consider what they may have been doing here before the bombs fell. Not to mention now those experiments now involved me. Just trying not to think about my journey insights too much. I still had the ponies safe even if I was as good as them once whatever that robotic bastard had done to me came to fruition. As for our adversaries, they seemed to have dwindled into non-existence. Despite their poor equipment and foolhardy tenacity, any raiders couldn't be behind us. Zopony was pulling the strings on the scavenger hunt, and I'd really like to have a word with such a pony. Look ahead, I could see the hall split left and right. Sublevel 3 was once again displayed upon the wall opposite, as well as a label claiming that the main server's elevator was to the left. With a dull hum, the doors to a lab on our left opened. My ears perked as I watched another set of doors on the far end of the lab also open up as I peered through the glass. As unnerving as it was, I had a good idea who was opening doors for us. I stopped at the edge of the last doorway and peering into the lab. I'd overheard them say that they were low on raiders, as both the corpses littering the levels below us and those littering the hallway on the level we were currently on were evidence of their mounting losses. If I didn't know any better, I'd say they completely run out. I guess that means that all that's left is the cunning ponies. My gaze swept across the lab before staying on the open doors on the opposite side of the laboratory. This way, I told Cherry, gesturing toward the open door. There was a reason for why the overseer was opening doors the way that he was. Wait, was I following him again? My mind spun for a moment before reflecting upon my thought process and decision making ever since I entered this structure. Shut up, brain. If he wanted to kill me, then he'd have certainly done it already. I really hoped I could believe that. Yet, as if on cue, a new sound met my perked ears. You have any idea why we're raiding here? A bug's voice sounded to the right of the lab's exit. Somebody was waiting for us right around the corner, probably hoping to catch us by surprise. I brought my saddle blaster up and aimed toward the doorway and rotated my hoof, motioning for Jerry to take the other side. Chief's orders. She's gone back to the boss with flash drive. I can't get it from up here or something. But something down there has got Chief spooked. Another bug responded in a slightly deeper tone. $2. My visor confirmed as much. As I also gauged their combat readiness as I once again used my rifle's casing to peer around the corner. Both were wearing minigun bell saddles, like carapace sparding upon which bore a strange icon. My mind paused for a moment at that and I squinted at the icon. It was almost recognizable, if not far clearer than any faint memory I had. I knew the images of an 8-point star and I recognized that strange hieroglyphic pattern that covered the armor like some kind of freaky spider's web. I saw it converse for a moment. See, all since I'd seen it before. Yet, I couldn't work out where I had seen those icons. Must be something pretty terrifying to get her running to the boss empty-hoofed. When the bucks chuckled, his laughter being joined by the second. Well, you never know. Skulking about in one of these fucking reliquaries, they're like death traps. You remember the last one? Louder toned Buck asked. I paused, holding my gun firm. I could spare these two a moment to enlighten me further. You mean the Stalingrad one or the one in Trottingen? Shit, after a while they all just blur together. But I know, if I had the choice, I'd rather take a stroll through Bucking Castle than going back down into some of those Bucking tombs. Especially there is a chance we will find another pony like Carnage or Locust. The deeper voiced Buck added firmly. With all of this new information and incredulousness. Wait, there are more of these places? Why the fuck did you think, you idiot? Of course, there would bound to be more. The wasteland's just like the fuck with ponies like that. But really, he'd rather go through the Kerala ruins over this. More confusingly, who the fuck is this Carnage? A Locust? Why do you seem to refer to the names with trepidation? But as usual, I just hope the bear can keep them both on the leash. The second Buck replayed, almost whispering. Relax, the Inquisitors have got all under control. Carnage is one pony I won't fuck with. The Grand Inquisitor, are you really doubting him? The first stallion responded. The former shook his head, and the pair seemed to shiver as if somebody was walking over their future graves. Those ponies were themselves, standing on that very spot. I'd heard enough of the cryptic chit-chat for one day. I'd hoped they'd unknowingly elaborate on what the place was, what the fuck may have happened to me. No. However, they were just rambling over some more shit I'd no idea about. My horn flared, lifting my plasma rifles around the corner as I cautiously poked my head out from behind where I had taken cover again. Number of targets, 2. The spell in my visor declared, highlighting them both of them in the red outline designated for enemies. I thought to use a grenade, yet after hearing them talk about big, scary boss ponies, I decided to try to save them. I looked back to Cherry, who was still hunkered down at the opposite side of the doorway. I'm gonna charge. You stay right behind me, and if any of them don't go down, you take them out, I instructed. Cherry closed her eyes tightly again as she nodded. Every moment I had to ask her to do this was tearing me apart. Not only that, it threatened to further corrupt her from the innocence she had before the death at which she had dealt with this bucking place. Nevertheless, one way or another, we were getting past these bucks. Ready? I asked, poised to make a dash towards our unwary adversaries. She gave another stiff nod, nodding my own acceptance. I bolted from the doorway, 2 plasma rifles blasting a shower of glowing green bolts at our surprised opponents. These two assailants were far smaller than Slab, making the focus blast far more effective. The farthest Buck lost his rear legs to the short odds before he could even turn his saddle-mounted weapon to bear in my direction. The armor of the second absorbed most of the energy, yet those which struck his coat seared it black. One bolt singed his eyes, sending him into frantic buck as it melted. Spinning, he bit down on the bell's saddle's firing mechanism, and the minigun whirled to life, striking the wall to his left before turning the clean wire into a mangled mess of metal, sharp and broken concrete. I ducked down below the hail of death, reloading my 2 rifles, to which I sent several more disintegration blasts his way. The beams mostly struck his head, each one shearing more of his flesh. His whole head splattered into a bloody paste upon the clean wall behind him. Sherry gave a stuttered cry, she stopped beside me, lowering her head and closing her eyes as Buck's body crumpled to the floor in the mess of singed gore, his miniguns rattling, coming to a halt. Slowly rose to my hooves, desensitized to the sight of death and gore from having dealt so much of it myself. First, my eyes met the legless Buck, who had now fallen silent. Then I looked to the decapitated corpse, which was gradually losing its twitching on the other side of the doorway. I'd asked her to do that. No, I had forced her. There was no way she would have disobeyed me. Or rather, she was too afraid to disobey me. And yet, in spite of her fearfulness of me, I'd made her kill another pony. The pink-colored mare trotted forward, her head held above the bloody corpse of her most recent kill. I froze, paralyzed by a mysterious feeling of guilt that she was forced to come face to face with what was left of the pony she decapitated. She paused, seeming to end her internal battle against the truth of the wasteland. I took a tentative step towards her, followed by another until I was right by her side. "Cherry," I asked her with a feeling of trepidation as she glanced back in my direction. Her eyes were teary, yet not sad, and far from trembling. Wise fears she bore when we met. "It's okay. I'm okay." She stayed weakly, most likely trying to deny the obvious reality that her mind was slowly being warped by the wasteland. Would she dream of making a difference? Had she imagined it to be like this? Had she known the cruel effects of the wasteland? I stepped past her, levitating my sound blaster close. She wasn't okay. I didn't need to remind myself of that anymore. Now she knew it for herself. She now realized what killing other ponies did to her. It was something that the wasteland had done to me a long time ago. Unlike me, however, she was a strong pony. A far stronger pony than I had ever been. She was simply accepting the truth on the wasteland, becoming like every survivor who lived on this miserable planet. Yet, I knew I should stop her, preserve the timid little mare I thought I had seen in the saloon. Yet, that had not been the real her. That had been the weak husk of a pony recently exposed to the trauma of slavery and the casual disregard for any pony's life. The pony I had thought I had seen was almost like a cocoon, a protective shell within which she'd been locked inside, until now. Now she was emerging a changed pony, the one who survived the murderer's reality in the wasteland. A loud boom shook the pair of us back to reality as we traveled down the corridor. I looked up, shaking my head. There was yet another fork in the corridor just ahead. More distinctively was a sign that told me that the service elevator was still to the left. "Come on," I called back, moving forward. Once again, standing still for too long had disturbed my fight, yet the discomfort was getting far easier to deal with and had mostly faded the moment I had reached the corner of the hallway. Peering around the hall, I didn't see any pony. Instead, there was a thin barrier of curtain-like plastic sheets, illuminated by a bright glow. I didn't like the fact that they lacked the decency to let us see through them. Yet if any plane was directly on the other side, I was certain the light would have exposed their silhouettes. "It's clear," I whispered back. Cherry gave a slight nod, and I levitated my blaster around to my front before creeping around the corner. Brushing by the plastic barrier, I noticed the white laboratory was replaced with a long chamber of cold concrete walls, the likes of which I recognized. To my left was the metal door the overseer had used to separate us, the likes of which was still firmly locked. A few hoof steps to my right was the large service elevator. I could only glimpse the tracks as they led up into the tunnel, or the crates that lay between us and it. Regardless, as we began to creep out from the corner, another loud boom sounded, shaking the chamber in its foundation. A rocket! I both heard the whoosh and I saw it exploded against a huge sub-level 3 right on the chamber's domed roof. Both of us jumped as the faintest shockwave of the explosion rushed by. I was glad for a silent shock. However, as it was quite clear we were not the only ones in here. "Hear it again! We'll draw him out!" a fiercely aggressive buck barked. My ears perked, and as the voice ran through my head, yet I found it far stranger. It didn't sound that old, barely even an adult, yet it resonated with a furious anger more frightening than the rage of Goddess of Celestia. I stopped, my flank brushing against one of the Destiny Corp crates that peered around its edge. Standing before the elevator were several ponies, all displayed as spread by my visor. A buck paced angrily about the center of the room, where he was surrounded by more bucks and mares. All wore the same black armor barding which had been worn on the opponents we had encountered previously in the lower levels of this place. All of whom were bearing that strange star symbol upon their armor. Not only that, but many of them were armed with a vast assortment of weaponry, and all were staring timidly at the bug pacing between them. In a cage on the elevator behind them were several almost animalistic raider ponies locked up in metallic cages, all gnashing and gnawing at the bars of their metal cages like wild animals. One buck stood before the very angry-looking stallion and calmly reloading his saddle-mounted rocket launcher. I explained the explosions, I surmised as I saw the corresponding hole in the roof. "I draw him out, and you'll tell me where the relics are. You don't go to so much trouble to get in here only to leave with nothing!" The angry, adolescent-sounding leader bellowed, seemingly to himself. The young buck barely looked bigger than me, yet was surprising in itself. Yet what I saw next confused me far more than his youthful appearance. He wore a set of coal black armor, which was lined with a red trim that glowed like hot embers. It bore a striking resemblance to that of the armor worn by the pre-war royal guard. That, however, was where those similarities ceased. Beneath the suit, a strange metal harness stretched over his bulging muscles, almost like a tight medical brace for his entire body. The tarnished metal was harshly crafted into his blood-red coat, as evident by the deep scars around it. Over the back of his bare neck, the frame rose into 6 small glass cylinders, each filled with a bubbling red liquid and bearing syringes poised to strike deadly into his spine. His eyes, too, were bloodshot and crazed, like that of a raider. His teeth were sharpened like that of some hungry dragon, yet they were far too clean to be that of any run-of-the-mill savage wastelander. His mane and tail had been shaved off, as had most of his original coat, leaving the bulging red muscles beneath to shimmer like he was some sort of oversized plastic figurine. I would have almost said he looked attractive in the way that a body sculptor is attractive, and couldn't help but think about what I'd do to a stallion with a physique like that if I had the opportunity. Yet his look was so unnatural and extreme that it was almost sickly, like he didn't care about how hideous he became if his modifications denied the limitations of his carnal vessel. Not to mention he was hot for a great deal of many other reasons. Most striking of all was the fire. His tail was formed from it, as was his helmet crest. Now, anywhere there may have once been a mane, burned with flame. His metal horn was likewise red in flames as well. Upon either side of said horn were pipes which seemingly fed fuel into what appeared to be a flamethrower at its tip. Both his hooves and ankles too were laced with bright red flame, rising up from his formidable clawed brazen hoof guards. In both instances, the flame scorched his red hind and blanked his flesh, yet did not eat at it. More confusing still was the lack of concern or pain he showed. There was no sign of pure agony the flames must have induced, as they must have naturally seared him constantly. As for where they were coming from, I could only assume it was something built into his armor, judging by the 2 small glass tanks upon his back. All that built upon a buck who was only about a week free of being a colt? He was in his late teens at best. His angry voice only reinforced my ideas, like that of a fool who couldn't get their own way. Yet I had a feeling this pony's temper tantrums didn't end it as scolding and a banishment to his room. The front of his armor was doused in blood, the likes of which was almost invincible against his red hide. It almost certainly came from a being corpse that all but been crushed to offal upon the concrete at his hooves. Carnage, I assumed, judging by the fearful expressions of his peers as he stormed about angrily. Somehow I doubted giving an angry teenager the power over a group of armed ponies wasn't the best idea. Never mind the physical implications of his fearsome appearance. "Come on, you little fucker! Come on!" he shouted at the roof. If he wasn't doused in blood, flames, and didn't have all the ponies about him shit scared, then I may have been tempted to call his tantrum amusing. Nevertheless, I had to work out a way of getting us out of here, which meant getting past them. Somehow. "Fire again!" Carnage instructed the rocket launcher buck firmly, pointing it to the crumbling roof with a gore-stained hoof. "I said fire!" he screamed impatiently, as the bug squirmed nervously, firing again. I ducked behind back the crate as the explosion rang out, bringing down a good piece of the roof down with it. The bug fighting on the rocket was not so lucky, as the rubble crashed atop him with a thunderous boom. Several ponies coughed as the dust of the impact bloomed through the room. Yet as Carnage's bursting gaze cast over them, they froze best they could. The fiery bug just looked back at the pile of rubble triumphantly. Sharp, white teeth flashing at his bloodshot gaze, glanced up to the hole above. Several walkways and corridors had given way with the roof, leaving the level above exposed. Clearing the dust from my eyes, I looked back at them with a newfound disgust. They may have not been good ponies, but to so readily suffocate the lives of even their own was incredibly harsh. "Come on out! Come the fuck down here, you little fucker!" Carnage raged to no pony in particular. "Well, I think somebody has a favorite word," I noted at the repeated cursing. Meanwhile, I swallowed my anger. There was no way I was taking on all of them, especially that rage-filled monster pony thing. It may barely be a bug, but there was a reason the other ponies didn't question his furious cruelty. I glanced at the service elevator, our way out. Looking back, I could see the crates could shield us most of the way around. Yet I had no idea how fast it would climb once we were on it, nor how long it would take to activate it. All of which would be time spent on the line of fire. "If you insist, but this behavior is most unacceptable," a familiarly charismatic voice stated dryly. My ears rose, twitching as my gaze flashed red. The glowing orb descended casually from the shattered corridors above, hovering directly above Carnage. The red bug smiled sinisterly. Then he gave a sly laugh. My eyes narrowed as I glimpsed around the crate to see the little fucker who tricked me. Overseer. I pulled myself back behind the crate, fearing that if I looked at the talking light bulb any longer I might snap and get us both killed. Instead, I turned to Cherry. Looking beyond her, I saw the row of crates leaning close to the edge of the elevator platform. "Come on. We're gonna have to sneak as close to the exit as we can," I whispered, gesturing towards the elevator. "You caused me a lot of trouble, Sparky," Carnage growled, his sinister laugh fading to a deep rumble. I couldn't see, but I could almost imagine the imposed smile upon Overseer's pathetic excuse for a face. Nevertheless, there was a long pause in the conversation, broken only by our quiet shuffling. "I am afraid the sentiment is mutual. You and your companions have displayed no respect for even the most basic of regulations. I had expected better from you." The cheerful tone replied almost as if begging it could sound angry. I stopped. ears perking again. So he wasn't just going to blow Overseer up. Funny. Connors didn't strike me as somebody who liked to chat. And I've known him for what, 5 minutes? Regardless, I still two crates on the edge of the elevator. I had no way of getting either of us onto the without getting seen. Running through my list of options was not providing me with any better. I still had a stealth bug, but there were only worked for one. Getting into a firefight with them was also out of the equation as there's just too many of them. Meanwhile, Gardner growled like some sort of starved hound, circling like a shark below the hovering orb. The Overseer showed little concern for the young buck's predatory movement. In fact, he seemed to be slightly amused. I shook my head. I had no idea how he was still managing to transmit his feelings with such a basic way of physical expression. That expression was no more than 4 shaking plates. He did, however, manage to place me within the memory orb without a memory orb. Maybe that had something to do with how he conveyed his feelings. I should have broken him when I had the chance, Gunner sneered, resuming his stance before Overseer. His glowing eye glanced down the carnage. His metal plates molded into a condensingly flat look. Such an act will only result in this unit's physical destruction. My advanced systems can be downloaded and redistributed into any foreign system in a matter of seconds. I could simply repurpose an older chassis, Overseer replied, seeming to revile in his mockery as he manufactured a smile. Carnage didn't seem to agree as he now looked more akin to a boiling volcano than a pony. "Then I'll rip your last system apart!" he declared furiously. Every pony around him flinched nervously, stepping back ever so subtly. They all knew what happened if this pony got mad. All I knew for sure was that it could be anything ordinary. Regardless, I didn't want to find out why they were so frightening, and I pulled my gaze back, moving both myself and Cherry to the next crate along. Such a wasteful use of this program's potential. I still cannot understand why Mr. Hayland thought you were ready. I do hope your sisters are more mindful of their importance. I stopped again. This time only 1 crate from the elevator. I had to hear as much as I could in hopes they would give me at least some clue to what was going on. Better yet, what had happened to me. Connor just growled at the pens warningly. Yet, only the other ponies and I seemed wary of it. Overseer's expression fell to what robots ought to be. Emotionless. "You won't know you're just a worthless piece of scrap metal. I'll show you how ready I am when I tear you apart!" The flaming red bug declared, stomping a clawed hoof against the floor. The flames about his body flared as he did so. The ponies about his squirmed nervously. And once again, the Overseer appeared unfazed. "Well, I can assure you, you will not find any more members of the apotheosis here. This facility has focused its resources on a far more important project, one that I can assure you that I have taken good care of," the Overseer declared in a tone of nonchalance. My ears perked up. I couldn't help but feel he was referring to whatever the fuck he'd been trying to do here. What he tried and failed to do. Nonetheless, judging by horrific abuse the mare in the tank and all the ponies labeled as failures down below had suffered. I tried just to focus on hearing what the cheerful voice had to say, blocking out what I'd seen below, despite the fact that I might soon end up being the same way. Carnage looked furious, like he knew exactly what he was being told was true, and he didn't like what he had been told. His tired ears flattened and his red eyes narrowed scornfully. "The sigil has a place for all 4 of us in paradise. The transcendent will rise," he declared, sounding like a zealous fanatic. The red eyes looked unimpressed, to say the least. "Sigil? Transcendent? Why must you insist upon such incorrect terminology? It would seem that prolonged exposure to the adrenal stimulant has imbued you with illogical and faulty thought process, he replied, making Starfield's cheerful voice seem somehow bored. Just want to bury my head in my hooves. Sexual. Transcendent. I feel like Overseer was questioning him. But at least he seemed to have an idea of what it was that he was doubting. To me, it just sounded like more nonsense to be thrown into the rest of everything I found confusing since upon entering this place. I've had enough of this. I said no to no pony but the great Sejal. Carnage screamed like a bratty teenager he was. Overseer's look was still one of little care. Give me the fucking relic, he added furiously. But Overseer merely laughed. The robot actually laughed. It was a painfully sarcastic laugh, but a laugh nonetheless. Then he suddenly stopped, as if wanting to say something more before Carnage could inevitably explode. Relic? You still insist on using my facilities as a base in your false region? It seems I may have to re-evaluate the effects all the tests may have had on their surviving subjects. As for the code to which I know you so falsely refer, do not be ridiculous. After the events of the Stalingrad facility, I will never allow you to acquire any more of them. You are lucky I allowed your pod to be retrieved by this transcendent Carnage, is it now? Overseer's frame shifted upwards on one side, almost appeared witty. Not only that, but if it were not for the arrival of a former subject, you would never have broken my security measures. He laughed mockingly. Then with a sharp hum of his propulsion system, he hovered right to the Carnage's angered face. I no longer possess this facility's data or external subject. As for the codes, I'll assure you that they will never fall within your reach. He finalized confidently, smiling down at the bug as fast as his metallic-plated body would allow. Enough, you fucking overpriced light bulb! Carnage screamed with a roar akin to that of a dragon. He reared up, preparing to smash his forehooves down on the hovering robot. However, the Overseer was faster and was safely in front of him as his hooves slammed into the concrete. Then my jaw hit the floor as the concrete actually cracked beneath Carnage's impact-filled strike, leaving 2 firm hoof impressions in the wounded surface. It seems I was incorrect. You may possess the physical stimulant of the destruction project, yet you are not competent in its proper use at all. He hovered further, back glancing to the mutilated corpse before Carnage as he did so. It would also seem that your rage may take much more. Know that I will not allow any of them to retrieve any more of your father's work, he added tauntingly, leaning back further towards the hole in the roof. I had little time to process any new revelation before Carnage let out a blood-curdling scream. The syringes on his neck hissed sharply, the fire enveloping his body exposed from his armor, as the sharp needles pressed the liquids each syringe contained down into his spine. The metal exoskeleton that grated into his coat began to spark to life, forcing yet more metal bolts into his bulging muscles. He shivered painfully, as his bloodshot eyes went wide. His pupils reduced to shivering dots as the once white spheres glowed a bright red. Enough! His new, reverberating voice boomed now like the volume that of a... By the goddess, it was far worse than the dragon. Flaming spewed from the makeshift flamethrower at the tip of his metal horn, engulfing Overseer. I pressed myself back against the crate. Okay, this must be why ponies were afraid of pissing him off. He became a raging demon pony. The ponies under his command backed up as far as possible without drawing the flaming monster's gaze, who appeared like something dragged straight out of hell. Carnage now looked like his main suggestion. The deep, demonic voice that was once that of an angry teenage cackled menacingly, echoing through my mind painfully. Really? Such behavior is most unacceptable. Overseer muttered, oblivious to the raging monster pony thing before him. With a loud hum, the orb levitated up away from the flames, his metal frame glowing red hot from the fire. Carnage didn't seem to give a fuck either, as he redirected his flamethrower towards the orb. Such impudence. It seems that some discipline is in order, Overseer criticized calmly, backing off into the hole above. Suddenly, the chamber became filled with sounds, as alarms rang out all around us. I jumped back behind the cover of the crate as many flashing red lights replaced those of the chamber's standard illumination. With a hiss, a torrent of cold water began to rain down over the whole chamber. He activated the fire safety systems? As much as I hated Overseer, I could help but find his way triumph over the red rage machine a little amusing. Go, you weaklings! Bring me the little fucker and everything he knows! Carnage's demonic voice boomed to his cowering follower. No pony was willing to hesitate, nor did any of them follow Carnage as he eagerly charged into the hall opposite of us. We both tensed as the vast majority of the group ran by us and into the corridors we just emerged from. Only after a few long moments later did any pony dare to follow Carnage down the corridor opposite from us. You two stay here and keep a watch on our escape, the crowd sounding Mayor's voice instructed. I recognized that voice. Sure enough, I peered around the final crate. I saw Chief. To the flashing lights of the alarms and the drowning hum of the pouring sprinklers, I could see the highlighted outlines of her body. On the end of the barring, she was a short gray earth pony, barely half the size of me, with a sleek brown mane and tail. A yellow and black maned mare and a blue buck were with her, both wearing the same barding. The former was armed with a twin rifle battle saddle, while the latter was equipped with energy rifles. If this had been me a few days ago, I'd have leaped through the roof with joy at the sight of the light show she was panicking. But I really just wanted to get the fuck out of here. I hoped that having a homicidal rage-fueled demon pony as your leader would make his cronies too fearful to enact any strategy without his approval. But now I figured that was Chief's job. I also assumed that it was the only reason she wasn't paced on the floor like whoever the last pony was to fail her brutal master. Both the ponies being left behind, however, didn't look too confident about Chief's orders. I was sure that it wasn't the cold water that was making them shiver. But disobeying Carnage's orders. Ma'am, he'll smash this bitch just like Flash if he finds out. The mayor explained nervously, and the bug nodded his agreement with the mayor had pointed out. Not my problem. If you are still here when Amy be back, I'll try to put in a word for you. He'll make it painless if I ask nicely. Chief hissed coldly, slipping away in the direction the rage monster in question had charged. Now stay here, or I fucking tell you! She screamed back, before galloping down off the corridor after Carnage and the rest. I was unsure who exactly was in charge of this random group of ponies. Perhaps it wasn't Carnage? He just seemed to be there to keep the others in line and seriously reduce their numbers. No, somebody else was behind this, just as Overseer suggested. I guess it was the sigil they referred to, or whatever the fuck transcendent meant. As interesting as it would be to know the full details of what was going on, however, we were leaving now. I peered out from the corner from the crate. Both guard ponies were stood just before the elevator's control panel. Behind them was a cage filled with several angry raider ponies. Do you really think it's a good idea to stay here? Look what he did to Flash. The mayor whispered nervously as if Carnage was somehow in earshot. I don't know, but we stay here and maybe he'll be too angry to care. He retorted swiftly, shivering all the same. The mayor looked reluctant to expect that. This isn't what the sigil promised. It was a promise of salvation, not... She stared at the black quill and any more words from her with a hard, stony look. Do not question the sigil. It will be fine if we stay true to our orders and do as we are instructed. Neither of them seemed to believe that. It was almost a shame I wasn't going to give either of them a chance to find out their own fate. Same thing as last time. I'll take the first shot. You get any that don't go down. I told Cherry as she nodded in complete seriousness. swallowed hard, seeing my feelings best I could as rolled from around the crate, weapons poised. No, no, I can't do this. He'll kill us! The mare panicked rarely as she turned to run. Instead, her wide eyes met the barrel of my levitating weapon. I froze, caught by surprise as our gazes locked. My eyes narrowed, focusing on the round line. It was red. Yet she looked so lost and afraid. She didn't look like a monster. She bent down over the trigger of her energy rifle bow saddle. My eyes widened with shock and then pain as one of the twin beams struck my forehoof, the other bouncing from the dragon scales of my barding. It was no saddle blaster, yet the searing shot tore through my flesh, all the same crippling my right forehoof. Dragonfire! Cherry called, leaping up behind me. Two shots flashed into the mare. One struck her in the left foreleg, the other tearing her right ear clean off. She reared up, screaming in pain as she staggered back past the bug, striking the control panel as she failed. The old elevator gave a shudder, the hydraulics roaring below as it began to climb. Before I had a chance to recover, the bug turned his twin rifles at Cherry. The pink mare darted to the floor as she fought to reload. I tensed and focused my magic on the buck. Oh no, you don't. I groaned and telekinetically, forcing him back with all my magical strength. He staggered, almost stumbling from the platform of his battle sector fired. One shot went while narrowly missing Cherry's head and instead hitting the wall of the service tunnel. The second struck the raider cage's lock, shattering it in a cloud of sparks and sharple. It shattered the cage of raiders, as the insane ponies within burst forth from their confinement. I then turned to look wide-eyed at the bug who had, of all things, shot the lock which had, till now, kept them confined and contained. Of all the dumb luck. The floor platform gave another whir, with water pouring from its surface as it began to swiftly ascend into the tunnel. The sounds of the alarm stopped as it did so, as did the dolge. And the dusty sound of the wasteland drifted down from the open tunnel. After what I had been through down here, I was almost glad for that familiarly awful smell. If only I had not been struck in the middle of a fight. The cage of raiders swung open violently. Cherry's eyes widening as she stood, only to see a group of ponies no different from those which had tortured her charging right towards her. Without hesitation, I forced my magic back around my weapon and swung it around to face towards the new threat. In a flash of light, two were reduced to ash, and was crumpled and skidding across the soaked metal. Three were able to run, one towards Cherry. I tried to force myself up, but my wooden foreleg slipping out from under me, burning with pain as it struck with the wet floor. Cherry, look out! I cried out in panic terror as she staggered back timidly, rising zap zap and firing his two shots blindly into the charging raider. The first glanced his left forehoof, the second melted a hole in his chest. His lifeless corpse led into a bloody hole at our hoofs, convulsing violently. My anger flared, as I realized what I was forcing her to do again. I was supposed to save her, and the weight of the other pony over me stole my attention. Why, aren't you just fucking delicious? My attacker, a far larger mare with a grisly expression and spiked mane, hissed around the sharp metal protruding from her muzzle. Goddess only knew where she'd been keeping that weapon while all locked up. I had to bring my weapon round to blast her, but she bucked it from my grip while her forehooves pushing down on my chest. I thrashed about, splashing in the water like a beached fish, and tried to break free. The larger mare merely smiled cruelly. Oh, and where do you think you're going, little pony? She asked cruelly, lowering her rusty blade to my throat. I stopped thrashing, instead forcing my horn to flare once more. Fuck you! I screamed as one of my twin plasma rifles elevated up behind her. Hearing a shot would go right through her skull and into my own, I instead swung the hard end around with all my telekinetic strength, striking the back of her head. More of the gun gave away than her skull, since energy weapons were never as solidly constructed as their lead-flinging counterparts. It was enough to get her off me. She gave a painful squeal, staggering back. Almost instinctively I rolled aside, firing 2 bolts of blast into her right flank, turning her rear and spiked collar cutie mark into luminescent green sludge. Just before me, I saw the cell blaster laying on the web platform. Beyond it, a third-rater mare jumped onto the bug with the black barding and battle saddle. The pair thrashed about, the latter trying to force the mare as she tried to ram a hammer into his skull. I raised the plasma rifle and set 3 bolts of luminescent green death into her side. The grizzled mess of a pony gave a horrific screech, but not the slamming her hammer to fly onto the buck's face, reducing it to not more than bloody a fall with a single bone-crushing blow. Depleted. Even so, the third shot was enough to take off most of her head and send the half-dead pair staggering towards the edge of the platform, where they tumbled clumsily over the rail. Above the dull sky of the wasteland was slowly shedding light on the platform. I staggered onto my hooves, limply holding my crippled limb up from the slippery metal. My insides felt like a thunderstorm of surging nausea, sharp lancing pain, and shock-fueled convulsions, all of which were driving me to kneel over and vomit my guts up. A moment later, and that's exactly what I did, staggering to my knees and dropping my weapon to wet metal on my side. As the foul taste of my bile ate in my tongue and the spider gagging followed as a dull sunlight shimmered over the wet platform. "Dragonfire!" Cherry cried. All of a sudden I heard a sharp zap lance over my head, striking the yellow mare who'd shot me first back to the ground. "Cherry, stop!" I coughed instinctively, staggering to my hooves. Cherry froze instantly, her eyes falling to the wet floor, her mouth quivering. "Shit, Dragon, what did you just do? You dragged her into that, now." I shoved my recriminating thought away in the desperate to hold off the inevitable turmoil. Then my attention shifted as the platform ground to a rough halt. The dreary cloud overhung over me once again, and around us was the shattered remnants of some sort of pre-war warehouse. It was now nothing more than ruined walls and a glass roof containing several Destiny Corp crates. Surrounding it was the remains of a mesh fence, mostly torn down and buried beneath the desert sand. Swallowing the foul taste of vomit best I could, fighting not to gag as my insides lurched, my attention moved to the mare I just spared from Zap Zap's cruel sting. She was curled up tightly, shivering and drenched. She mumbled incoherently as she clenched her missing ear with a severely burned up forehoof. Both water and blood caked her quivering face as she stared hopelessly up at me, retrieving the saddle blaster from the crimson-stained pool that had fallen in. I staggered over to her. I hesitated to shoot her. Why had I hesitated? These ponies were red, not friendly. So why the fuck had I hesitated? "Go on! Just do it! Just do! At least life shall become transcendent now anyways," the mare whimpered. My expression tightened. "Who are you?" I demanded, pressing the glowing barrel of my rifle to her face. She shivered timidly, glaring up the length of the weapon with dull, tear-filled eyes. "You're them, aren't you? The meddlers. You're the reason the Sigil sent Baron and all the freaks to kill us all off. The Sigil sent them because of you. Fuck you! I thought I had something, but you had to go and ruin everything." She coughed heavily. My ears flattened. I had no idea who or what the fuck she was talking about. All this stuff? Why couldn't the wasteland simply just try and kill me? I really didn't have time for all this cryptic shit. Regardless, I twirled my gun around in the air. "Next time, I suggest that you don't shoot at me." I growled before slamming the metal stock into her head, knocking her out cold. "You'll become very well acquainted with the other end of my god." I yelled at the unconscious Miraz, then taking a deep, calming breath. The relatively fresh air cleared my throat of the acidic taste of bile before I turned back to Cherry. The moment I looked at her, the emotion the floodgates opened. I had to force her to do all that, only to tear her down in one sentence. I didn't know why I told her to stop. Why I hesitated in the first place. Holstered weapons, I took a step forward, almost stumbling on my crippled foreleg. I'm sorry. I told her with a weak kindness. She glanced up at me before her head looked away toward her right. I stammered, my tongue catching in a foul-tasting throat. It's okay, she whimpered softly. I reached out to her before dragging my hoof back and forcing any response back into my muzzle. Damn it, Dragonfire, it wasn't okay. That was just her default purpose to everything. But what was there to say? I mentally shelved that thought, deciding to deal with it later. We still had to find Star and get back to Churn. Only then could I sort her out. The only problem then would be me. As much as I was trying to ignore the feeling, Overseer had done something to me. And there was no point in going anywhere if whatever he had done to me meant that I was good as dead. I paused. I need to see a doctor. Luckily, there was at least one between here and home, even though that strangely didn't make me feel any better. My thoughts ground to a halt. I needed to find Star, or at least contact him. But he had the broadcaster. Checking my pit bug didn't offer me any hope either, and my ears sang as I discovered he was either out of range of the receiver, or something else was preventing his broadcaster from broadcasting and receiving signals from my pit bug. I looked up a moment later only to see Cherry staring upwards at something. Following her gaze, my eyes found themselves directed towards a heart-stopping sight. Above the ruined warehouse walls rose a great plume of dark smoke. A cold black column scared the sky almost as high as the cloud cover as it rolled away onto the easterly wind. I bolted, running towards the warehouse's ruined wall until finding a traversable breach at its lowest point. I found myself on the ridgeline overlooking the wall parking area of the Destiny Corp tower a few moments later. Just then, my gaze descended upon the searing flaming mess the glass building's lower levels had become. I almost felt my heart stop in my chest, a weight pulling me to the ground akin to that of an avalanche over my back. I gasped, smoky air filling my lungs as I staggered to the dirt. Fuck. God damn it. We should have never split up. If we hadn't, then this would be fine. Cherry wouldn't have been traumatized. It wouldn't have been somebody's experiment. That wave of cold air swiftly gave way to anger. This was my fault. But Star? He'd be fine, right? This wasn't the first time we'd been separated on the job. Only this time there was an evil corporation, a mad robot, and crazy raging demonic pony to consider. God, something was going on here, or something had been going on in this place long before we were drawn into it. Was it all worth the caps? The 50,000? It was within my reach, yet it seemed further away than ever. Had I gotten the data the Goliath asked for? What else had I gained? An emotionally traumatized companion, an increasingly fucked up body, and slowly gaining desire to know who the fuck sent us here in the first place. Whoever it was knew how much it was worth. Why else would he or she or they offer so much? Probably because they knew that other powerful interests were after whatever they were. My mind had a flashing image of the flaming red bug from below. I face-hooved. How the fuck could I have been so stupid? I knew it was dangerous from the moment I agreed to do it, and yet I still just trotted on in there and practically stirred myself up. As for Star, well, I refused to admit that bug was still in the burning building, no matter how much grief my mind threw my way. Star was strong, and I didn't think of a way to find him. I hoped. Regardless, I raised my hoods. I had been over this with myself at least once before. It was just like that time I thought I lost Star. Like I said, I didn't love him. I had to kill that flyer before it could blossom. No, I was a smart pony. Below, in the walled-off parking lot, we could see yet more raider ponies. Several of them gunned down, the others snapping at each other like the feral ghouls. Atop the winding stairs, several of the black armored ponies seemed to be bowing into the inferno and keeping it going with several flamethrowers. All the while, two of them kept a keen eye on the angry rabble of the wreckage-strewn asphalt. As I watched, I heard Cherry drag herself up beside me, her hooves trailing lazily through the dust as she looked up at the rising stack of black smoke hopelessly. I sensed similar feelings radiating off of her for different reasons. I wanted her to ask me something. With the curious little mirror I'd seen open that medical box or smash the display cabinets. I was afraid the wasteland had cut that out of her. Or even worse, that I had. I stepped back from the ridge, knowing that the small, seemingly insignificant sentence I uttered almost instinctively could completely bring her down. For what? To spare the life of a mare who had tried to kill us? I highly doubted she'd be in life when Carnage found her. And still, I had left her there to face his wrath. I killed that thought quickly. I killed monsters. That was okay. Monster or not, I had no obligation to save her from the ponies she was working for. I looked at Cherry, for only a brief moment before turning my gaze to the desert. The wide open sands blurred like a dusty haze on the horizons as winds whipped up the dust bowl from the west. Come on, we need to put some distance between us and this place before nightfall, I suggested dryly, before limping my way down the hill. She didn't argue, and once again her hoof steps fell in line behind my own. Funo, level up. Perk added, Secrets of Spelunking. You notice what that goddess forsaken place did to you, but at least you can safely say you know better. You gain +1 perception and chances to find rare items are increased by 5% whenever in any dungeons. A death effect added, Guinea Pig. Like it or not, you've made a big mistake and now have to live with the fact that you may just boil away and melt at any time. You suffer -1 to both strength and endurance.